There has been one organization fighting the deep state since before it was even called the deep state. In fact, they've been at this for twice as long as I've been alive, almost. I don't know. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Behind the Deep State. I am your host, Alex Newman, senior editor at the New American Magazine. We have a very special guest with us today. I don't normally have guests on Behind the Deep State, but I'm at the New American Studios, and I just happened to run into this guy. His name is Wayne Morrow. He is the vice president of the John Birch Society. He's the chairman of the board for American Opinion Foundation. He's like the big cheese around here, or a big cheese around here.
We're in Wisconsin. It has to be a big cheese.
Exactly. And he's a good guy, too. He's a friend. Wayne, JBS is an extraordinary organization. It is actually the parent of the New American Magazine. And the JBS has been fighting the deep state since before it was even called deep state. In fact, back in the day, it was insiders and establishment. Give us a little overview. What is the John Birch Society? Do you still oversee the field team? Do you still?
Yes, I
still
do.
Okay, so he's a jack of all trades, too. He oversees this wonderful field staff that the JBS has. So tell us, what is the JBS? Give us a little bit of the history there, and what does it do?
Okay. Well, the John Birch Society has been around since 1958. And Mr. Welch, the founder of the Birch Society, picked John Birch as a namesake for a man who was murdered by Chinese communists. And he was out of Macon, Georgia. He was a Christian missionary. And most people think that John Birch founded the Birch Society. You know, that's not right. So it's an interesting name that we have is, a name given by Mr. Welch because he represented the I guess you would say not only the responsibilities but the ethics of what a good person would be as an American. And that's how the John Birch name showed up as the John Birch Society. So in 1958, Mr. Welch gave a 2-day speech in Indianapolis and in front of maybe about 5 to 10 titans of industries explaining really what was going on in the world, much like today. There were many conservative groups worried about how the world was shaping. And he said, let's make this simple. He said, I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening. And the reason why we're not effective because we have too many groups, kind of like today. And he said, let's just all bring it together. We have to have an organized group. So the Birch Society was founded. And it grew from a concept at Indianapolis. As you said, it's 63 years old now. And our whole thesis has been, and our whole mission has been education, telling people really what's going on. You're right. Early on, you said insiders. Mr. Welch was the insiders, which there were globalists, and the deep state morphed into another name, which is really the insiders, which were conspirators working against freedom and liberty worldwide, that is. And he recognized what they were, plotting against liberty.
And he recognized this like generations before there was an internet and before you could go on YouTube or listen to talk radio on this topic. He really saw this like way ahead of time. And the guy was such a genius. He went to college when he was 12?
Yep,
University
graduated
of North
at
Carolina.
16 years old.
Then he went to Harvard Law School and thought, this is ridiculous. I'm out of here, and founded a candy company. Fascinating guy. And most of the times on this show, it's usually just me talking about what the deep state is up to, who are the people in the deep state. I like to give people names, not just they. But the John Birch Society does focus on exposing these people and what they do. But even more important than that, I think one of the lines I hear you use a lot is education without action is frustration.
Absolutely.
And so that's where the JBS comes in. Talk about what kind of action does the JBS engage in? What is the JBS strategy for stopping the deep state?
Yeah. So we came out with these little trifolds. It makes it real simple to understand because its simplicity is important. And so let's identify who the problem is. We know it's spiritual. It's a war against God. It's not economics, although they use it as a tool. They use power. But it's really a spiritual battle. Yeah. It's a war against God. And you have to understand that's really what this is all about, going on for a long time. And so the Birch Society came along and said, hey, look, let's identify who the enemy is. Of course, we've got a lot of attacks. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them.
They're conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, you guys.
And right-wing extremists.
Right. And it's not a theory anymore. It's real, right? Mr. Wells says at the end, he said they're running around naked in the streets because they don't really care anymore.
And we're like practically there now, right?
Yeah, right.
You can see Klaus Schwab. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at me. We need a great reset.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, you know. It's so, you know, what do we believe in? I want to read this a little bit because I think this is important. We believe in the American system of government, a constitutional republic, the finest ever developed by man. Number two, we believe in the traditional moral values of our Judeo-Christian heritage, form a cornerstones of the Western civilization, and the family is the most vital unit of the society. We believe in a free market system, competitive capitalism, private enterprise. I like this one here. We believe in the dignity of the individual. We welcome people of all ethnic, racial, and religious backgrounds, judging others only by character and ability, as we wish to be judged by ourselves. Our common bond is a love for liberty and a rejection of totalitarianism under any label. And lastly, we believe in individual rights endowed by our Creator, not government, that our government's function should be limited on protecting the right of life, liberty, and property, and the individual rights are inseparable, linked to individual responsibility. We've been talking about that since 1958, and we read this, and we give these to people who are not members, and people are, because this is really our foundational beliefs. And I tell people, you disagree with anything I just said, the answer is no. Well, we've never moved off of this. So all the attacks you talk about, Alex, we talk about this, and it gets silence in the audience because I dispel all those rumors.
Yeah, and they did for a time. The insiders, the deep staters back in the early 1960s, they went on like a scorched earth campaign against JBS. Basically, what they tried to do to Trump, right? Every nasty name they could think of, and it didn't work. The JBS survived. As people would investigate these charges, they'd end up joining, and so finally the deep state just decided, all right, let's just keep our mouths shut and hope nobody notices them. Now, the JBS, I believe, has had an incredibly significant impact, and the radical left has actually noticed this. Just in the last few years, you've got all kinds of publications saying the John Birch Society won, the John Birch Society secretly controls the whole conservative movement, and
right.
Trumpism is Bircherism, and all the rest of it. But before we get to all that, Wayne, you oversee a field staff, right? The JBS is really unique. It's not just like an office in Washington, D.C. that puts out stuff on Facebook, right? There's like actually people on the ground that are...
We're not a letterhead.
Right. That are doing the organizing. They're out there getting information out into the hands of the people. They're organizing chapters. Talk about the structure of the JBS, because you oversee all of this.
Yes.
You have a unique vantage point over what's happening nationally. Talk about that.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about, first of all, who we were as an organization, because people don't know who we are. And we talk about basic information. So the field staff, very unique organization where we have a paid field staff, and they go out and talk about Americanism. And they actually teach Americanism to fellow Americans.
What is Americanism?
Yeah, what is Americanism? Who we are. We're a republic. We're not a democracy. The Constitution.
Aren't they the same thing?
No. Not semantics. And you should know this, right? Yeah. But the thing is, most people don't know that. Yeah. They think we're a democracy because they've been pumped in we're a democracy.
Because they haven't read the Constitution. The Federalist Papers.
No, they don't even know what it is.
Right.
The Constitution was written for us. No, it was written for a government. Mm-hmm. Those are all basic premises. So our job is to teach basic Americanism. And then once we understand who we are, then we can go through how it's been attacked, through our economy, through inflation, for the Constitution, the con, right? And in the Agenda 2030, you talk about the deep state, the Great Reset, how that all fits with a conspiracy. And, we put all the pieces together. And so it's not overwhelming, but we go through how do we then attack every one of these pieces. They come at us multiple ways. And so we go through a program, our monthly agenda, and how we support legislation against, make people aware of really what's going on in Washington.
And so this monthly agenda, it's the bulletin. It goes out to every member all across the country, and then they meet with their fellow Birchers in their local chapter. They do in chapters.
Yes, they do.
And then they just, give us some examples of stuff. What are some of the campaigns, the action? So you've got all these chapters all over the country, all these members all over the country. Mm-hmm. They're getting their action items. What does that look like? What do they do?
Well, we'll pick one. For example, the attack on the Constitution. So we educate people on the Constitution, number one. Number two, then we say, why would we want to have a convention of a Constitution? Why would we want to change the Constitution? It's not broken. No one's obeying it. And so then we go give people tools, our members, to go visit state legislators to explain really what this is all about. We actually educate state legislators, who, by the way, some have never read the Constitution.
And there are many Birchers who are state legislators all over the country. Yeah.
So that's one thing. We talk about inflation, really what it is, what's causing it. The Federal Reserve is public enemy number one in my mind.
Yeah, and the United Abominations.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then we talk about the UN, why that exists, what it's trying to do.
Why does it exist? What is it trying to do?
I think it's all about world government.
Oh, yeah, it is. And if you've been watching this show, you know that, right, folks?
Yeah. And they're not very friendly to liberty, if I can tell you that.
And so that's one of the big action campaigns of the JBS. It's been around for decades.
Get us out of the UN.
Oh, yeah, get us out. You probably saw the bumper stickers, the yard signs. Then there's like support your local police. Let's talk about that one. Why support your local police?
Why not?
Well, okay, but why does the John Birch Society? Why is it so committed to this idea of supporting local police?
Well, one of the planks
this has been for decades too. It's not a new thing.
Right. One of the planks of the Communist Manifesto is a nationalized police force. So our job is to keep police force local and independent. So they want
a national police to terrorize and oppress us, and if we have local police, they can protect our rights.
They're under attack all the time, and our police force is always under attack. The bad guys, right? Get rid of the police.
Yeah.
And we said, no, we appreciate the local police. We want to support them. And it's interesting as we go through the United States, as I drive through it, fly through it, is we've talked to local police officers, and they really appreciate the fact that we support them and appreciate what they do, because they don't hear enough of that.
Yeah.
They're not the enemy.
And actually, the JBS has the Law Enforcement Charitable Foundation, which exists to support the police. So we put out the Law Enforcement Intelligence Brief that goes to every police chief and sheriff in the country. I mean, the JBS does so many things. We could sit here and talk for hours.
We have our magazines, and we have books.
The New
Western
American
Isles,
Magazine. We got the school, Freedom Project Academy. Of course, you run the
Freedom Project Academy is an online school from kindergarten to high school.
I think a lot of people are listening to this like, no way.
Yeah,
JBS
we have a
does
school.
all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are some of the big action items, right? Support your local police, keep them independent, get us out of the United Nations, stop the Federal Reserve, stop the Constitutional Convention so they don't rewrite our Constitution.
Yep.
Why should people join? Why not just let other people handle that? Right? I got things to do, Wayne. I don't have time to, go to chapter meetings and write to my state legislators.
That's right. So you want to invest in your future. It's important. So here's why I would do this, is protecting not only my family currently, but the future family that I would have down the road, my grandkids and their family. And we stand on the blood-soaked soil of patriots of the past. So our heritage, is important, and we try to preserve that. Everybody has a reason why they do that. I try to get businessmen involved, because if we lose, their business goes away immediately.
Right.
It's nice to have your kids in online schools, but if you don't support and understand why schools are messed up, because we're under attack. So it's a vital organization to be part of, because we go after all the problems. Mm-hmm. Identify who the enemy really is. I said it's spiritual, but it manifests this way in a lot of different faces. And we have to know that all these things coming at us, why the Birch said you need to organize effort to make this happen, to be effective. It can't be just one thing. It has to be a multifaceted approach. And that's why we've been so effective and why we've lasted so long, because we've been telling the truth for so long.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. And I believe, and I say this regularly, I believe that the reason we still have as much freedom as we do, and of course it's been drastically diminished even over the last few years, but the reason we still have the freedoms that we have is because of the hard work of JBS. And usually it's behind the scenes. You don't often see Birchers out protesting or carrying billboards or getting media attention, but behind the scenes they're quietly educating their sheriff and their state legislators and their governors and their congressmen, just doing the work without anybody patting them on the back or saying thank you, but it really is so important. Wayne, we're almost out of time, but before we let you go, what's the best way for somebody to get involved? The website, jbs.org, of course. My coordinator used to say freedom has an address, but how does somebody get plugged in?
Yeah, well, jbs.org is a good place to start. We have our magazine, thenewamerican.com. We have local, as I mentioned, field coordinators in the United States. Just write to the JBS. We can certainly find out where you are and put you involved in contact with our coordinators, because we have local meetings, we have speeches, we have webinars, we have seminars, so we can educate. It's all about education, so that's how we plug people in. It's not overwhelming, but you have a place to start. And it's impactful, and we're growing. The organization is growing because people see that they really have to get involved. You got to get off the bleachers. You got to get in the playing field, because freedom isn't free. You got to work for it. Yeah. And so we're seeing a really good uptick, especially when you see what's going on in today's environment with the current administration. I mean, you have to see, as people tell us, hey, you guys have been right all along.
Yeah.
And I
It's
said,
amazing.
how about that?
It's
Well,
amazing.
you think we've been lying all along?
Yeah.
No, then they actually convinced themselves, hey, you guys been at it. So now they're going to have to get on the playing field and help us.
Yeah, it is truly fascinating to go back and look at the materials that the Birch Society's been putting out back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like, did you guys have a crystal ball? How did you know all that was going to happen, right? And now it's here, and people are like, wow, you were right, huh? The fake media lied.
History. Just have to know history. It repeats itself. We know the player. We know their strategies because they openly tell you that if you know where to look.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the program and all the
Thank
incredibly
you.
important
And
work.
thank
that
you all the
do.
good work that you do.
Well, thank you,
Absolutely.
Wayne. I appreciate it. It's just so important. So, folks, I'll tell you, I've gone all across this wonderful country of ours in recent years and have met, everywhere I go, the Birchers are just like the best people in the community. They're just fascinating people. So if you're not involved yet, do get involved. It's good to know about the deep state. It's good to know who they are, what they're up to. But unless you're actually getting involved and being part of the solution, you're actually part of the problem. So knowing is not enough. You got to get involved, and jbs.org is a good place to do that. All right, folks, I'm Alex Newman, senior editor at the New American Magazine. This is Behind the Deep State. Until next time, God bless you all.
The John Birch Society has been working tirelessly since 1958 to preserve freedom, safeguard the Constitution, and restore our God-given rights. We continually educate voters and lead the freedom movement. Join us as we work against a tyrannical one-world government. United as one, we can defeat this conspiracy against a free America. JBS founder Robert Welch said, "Education is our total strategy and truth our only weapon." Join us in restoring this great nation.